because it's Sunday morning and some people's time is precious, we're going to start the congregation with Tom Butler. So Tom doesn't know it, but I think my mother put me wise to this once, that Irish people, we're not friendly, we're just nosy. So it's my chance to channel my inner Mossad and quiz Tom Butler. I'm Deirdre. Tom invited me here to have a conversation about big picture thinking and wellness. So welcome, Mr. Tom Butler.
Thank you.
Who is Tom Butler?
Thank you, Deirdre. I think the answer to that question is probably very unimportant, because we don't really want to follow idols or anything like that. And we're just having a conversation today about big picture thinking and wellness, something that certainly the big picture thinking part I've pursued for a while. But people do like to know who's here, who am I, not sure where do I come from. I come from my mummy, just like most of us. I think that's an important distinguishing feature, because it brings us together wherever we come from. We all had a mother. And the divisions between people are one of the things that hold us back. What's my background? Grew up in a few different places because my parents were moving around as they were trying to make a living. I had a very fortunate upbringing in terms of good schools, good homes, lots of toys and that sort of thing. I was sent to business school, a good business school, Wharton Business School, looked at Wall Street, gave me a queasy feeling in my stomach, went to Asia, landed the week the students arrived in Tiananmen Square for an interview, came back for a job the week the tanks rolled into Tiananmen Square. Spent 10 years in Asia, mostly in Hong Kong, also Thailand. And in 1998, looking out from the penthouse balcony across the Bangkok landscape, decided that the world was a strange place when somebody like me could live in a place like this, and look down on the man next door having a bath in a corrugated tin bucket while he built the next skyscraper to send money up country for his family. And at the time I was doing investment management, private companies, venture capital, a dirty word these days, probably with reason. And so I asked, can somebody like me, with that sort of privilege, find out a way of balancing economics, making a living, with ethics, being decent with people, and the environment, which we were clearly destroying? And that was a long time ago. So I explained all this to my family, and they just sort of said, okay, as I dragged them to the bogs of Ireland to try and find answers to that question, and pursue a number of different enterprises, to see what would work, basically walk the talk while I thought about the ideas. And so we've been here for 22, 23 years. Came back to a family home, found out about my personal history, but also explored this idea of trying to make the world a better place. I wrote a book eventually, although the ideas came out very quickly. Do the right thing the right way. Time passed. One of the most striking things that I've done is I've run a small holding. I am a small holder. So those vegetables and flowers over there I picked out of the garden this morning, just to show you what can be produced by, a desk jockey. With a little bit of patience. But I think that world is a very important world for our well-being. It was discussed in the previous section, the connection with nature, whether it's just being there or actually connecting with nature. And I can assure you that putting your hands into the soil is a connection with nature. We've run a catering business, hospitality business, we've done investment management, all with the idea of, can we do it in a better way? Can we do it in a more open and sharing way and more honest way? In recent years, I think I've refined a formula which I think works for everyone to help people liberate their own potential. Find out who they are and become the people that they can be. And that simply is to breathe, think, and flow. Breathe liberates the human potential. Thinking is what humans are about. Consciousness, we have consciousness in a far greater degree than any other life form. And then flow. Flow with what? Flow with nature. Flow with the cosmic rhythm, as I say. Flow with universal law. Don't fight against the natural patterns of nature. And I've also come to a very shocking realization that the system we live in is killing us. I am obviously, being a financial engineer and a venture capitalist by training, I'm a capitalist, and yet I have found out that capitalism kills. And I think it was Bell Hooks who really sort of woke me up to that rationalization with a phrase that I heard in a memorial after she died earlier this year, I believe, or maybe last year. Imperialist, white supremacist heteropatriarchy. And that is the system we live in. And we'll benefit from it. Certainly I have done. And if we're going to move forward as a species, as a life form, we are going to have to change our behavior and our mindset. And I think we'll have to do it quite quickly, according to the newspapers, because the planet is disintegrating and people are becoming more fragmented in their relationships and, frankly, not so well. We have a pandemic. So I don't know if I've answered Deirdre's questions. Does anybody else have any questions to my answer? Thank you, Deirdre.
So I'm just curious, as there's no questions just yet, who allowed you to think that way, or who stepped out of your way to change your thought process and your previous thinking to how you're currently thinking about wellness? So who was in your way that you persuaded not to carry that mantle, and how is that happening for you now?
So, in other words, why did I change my thinking?
Who was in that journey that stopped or allowed you to think differently, or was it that man in the bath?
I think it was an accident of my situation, because I have 3 siblings. They have some similar thoughts, but nobody is as, pointy-headed as I am about this approach to life. I spent a lot of time sitting, ruminating on these ideas. So it wasn't 1998 when I suddenly said, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to try this new thing. I had papers going back at least 5 years where I had started to ask these questions, even design logos for an organization which would bring these values to fruition. So this goes back before. And then if I really ask myself, well, in high school I was, and this is in the early 80s, I was talking about recycling and switching off the lights. And it wasn't because I was told to, it was just like, this seems like a good idea. So I think what happened is, because I had, although I went through the same upbringing as all of us, I had a bit more liberality in my zone. I remember going to primary school, boarding school at the age of 8, and for the first year and a half, I think, they hadn't really cracked down on the behavior of the young people. And so we were allowed to go and play in the woods, and I built camps, and me and a few friends, we would just go out and hide under the twigs and leaves in the afternoon. Now that's freedom. That's actually people being people. And I think I explored those kind of tendencies. I learned to windsurf at the age of 8. When you're on a windsurfer out in the sea, I can tell you there's nobody telling you what to do. There's nobody telling you what to do. And you just hang on and hope you don't get sucked out into the Mediterranean. Bicycle, same thing. I did a lot of biking to go windsurfing. Again, you decide where you go. And I suppose I rebelled, or I certainly looked askance at some of the strange dichotomies I saw right in front of me. Going to school with privileged people who were mean. That was not correct. Why aren't we taking the responsibility and looking after one another? Why do we have this system of power and rules to beat one another down? Why do we tease that small person or that other person? This is not right. And I certainly, that kind of questioning of my environment continued and continued. So I'm a question, but I think we all do that, unless, as was discussed in the last session, we're trained to stop thinking, which starts to happen as we hit our teen years. I mean, obviously in primary we're told how things work. The question is, are we told not to ask questions? And that definitely happens in this country in secondary school. I didn't go through the system here, but my family did. And the stories that I've heard are shocking. And I don't think it's getting any better. So what we do is we're actually reducing one of the greatest abilities of Homo sapiens, which is to think, to ask questions. That's what it's all about, right? We come out from the monkey land, eat, sleep, reproduce, just like the chimp. But what do we also do? What's it all about? We're a questioning animal. We want to know what our environment is like. We want to know what we are like. And why? Because we want to make better and better decisions about how to live our life. So I don't think there was anyone in the way. Maybe it was because there was nobody in the way that I got to make it up as I went along.
So you mentioned Ireland. In terms of the establishment here, the establishment meaning Joe Duffy and the rest of the establishment, at what level of the establishment can you change, and where should we start with the bigger thinking elements?
The establishment is a problem, obviously. And I don't think... I would like to think that people like me can change the world because we set an example, right? I mean, my background suggests that if I say and do something, everybody will say, oh, look at that fellow, he's the top dog, we should do what he does. Unfortunately, when that top dog said, oh, we shouldn't be, taking money from people and getting rich, we should actually go and grow vegetables and love our families. Oh, no, don't want to do that. So that's a problem. However, the change is going to come in the way it always comes and only ever comes. And that is from us. You, me, him, her, and her. When we change our minds, that's when the change happens. And you can see the rumblings of it in the world today. Now, one of the rumblings is about this little pandemic that we're enjoying. Right? We've all been told to go and take a vaccine. But now people are asking questions. And they're asking the right questions, and there were people asking questions 2 years ago, and those people were vilified and locked up, almost literally. But why are we not asking questions about what we're putting into ourselves? When we're told that we're taking a vaccine, which is in fact not a vaccine, and they know it's not a vaccine, it's gene therapy. When we don't have the consequences, we have protocols laid out in the law about finding out what goes on. We're not educated. In fact, we almost choose to take a simple answer rather than the truth. And is that not religion? Is that not where we find ourselves? Quick question for our audience. Anyone believe in God? Please raise your hand. Thank you. 1, 2... Very good question. Thank you very much. What is the definition of God? Thank you. The question is maybe also what is belief? Because there are different kinds of belief. And I'm afraid I asked that question in a very pointed way for a long time because I got married in a church, I've been baptized and christened. I had all the bases covered. So I wanted to really explore that and find out the meaning. And it took me a long time, although the answer had been written down many times by quite well-read people prior. And of course, there is no God, whatever the definition. Far better to have a definition which people agree on. So if I have a religion, it's certainly not that kind of religion. It's more like I like chocolate. I'm religious about chocolate. It's that kind of religion. I like to say I'm religious about Terry Pratchett, an author, because it opens my head. But in terms of how I believe the world works, well, the answer is, I don't know, but I'm going to work with reason. And I'm going to use science, because that is the reason we're all sitting in this amazing place, because of reason, standing on the shoulders of other people who have created the technology for building, for heat, for IT.
I would have to disagree with that.
Please.
Because I question then the creative part of that, because that's quite black. Reason is black and white, but there is the colour. There is actually the colour that fills in that. There's the gap between that, and I feel that's creative, and that's some part of us that we can't explain, that is beyond reason, and that's to do with faith and to do with seeing beyond ourselves. And that's, I think, that we can look at life through reason, but there is an amalgamation of the two, and some are more preferent to the others, one to the other. That's mine.
Thank you. So in terms of, absolutely that thought, in terms of the congregation that we have here on Sunday, if there is no God and the church is dying, how can we all find ourselves in a new congregation building the future, a healthier, wellness-focused future? And where do you see a congregation approach to the better wellness of our planet? Or not even the planet, Carlo. Let's focus on Carlo for the minute, because we can't solve the problem, but where do we start within a new wellness congregation?
I feel a little bit lost at sea. I wasn't quite sure how to interpret your observation, so please forgive me. And if you want to come back and poke me a little bit, it will be but it will be healthy, because I think these kinds of discussions is how we take our thinking forward, and most importantly, change our minds. Okay, and make choices. And that is what came up in the previous conversation about, what can we say, wellness, making choices. And making choices is not following what other people do. That's not necessarily an active choice. The choice is, I want to do that because I think it's the right thing to do. And that's a different kind of behavior. I'm not sure if your reference is to the difference between, say, the material existence and the non-material existence, the mystical existence. And I think in modern science there has been some confusion that there is only a material existence, which is clearly not the case. There is a non-material existence. It's quite evident. And in fact, that's the predominant thing that's around us, the non-material existence. The physical existence of what we see around is a microcosm of our experience, really. It's the non-physical that is much greater. And maybe Descartes was the first person who tried to show that duality of existence, and we've tried to sweep it under the carpet because it's difficult to process. In terms of the new congregation, I think really you have to challenge, we all have to challenge ourselves, right? It's about critical thinking. It gets back to maybe the breathe, think, flow, but we must challenge ourselves, and we will find that it's not always easy to face yourself. And perhaps that's what some of those therapies do. They help you find a way to face who you are. I have to face the fact that I'm a scion of a slave-owning family. How do you come to terms with that? I have to face the reality that I'm a financial engineer, I'm an investor, and that whole system now I can see it's actually poisoned because it writes inequality into the law, and we all accept it without realizing it. It's quite challenging to do that. But that is facing yourself. That is beginning to know yourself. The human, well, let me say not the human. The way I approached all of these ideas, the big picture thinking and so on, was to try and take a non-human view of existence, a universal perspective. Now that is the first difference. Most of us have a human-centered view. Most of our gods are human ideas. The imagery is of a human, and far too often a man, not just a person. It used to be much more diverse, pantheic. So we step back, we try and take that universal view, and I say, okay, how does the universe work? What are the patterns that I can observe consistently, which I can learn from? And one of the patterns which many of us may have been exposed to is the sort of human developmental pattern, how we grow from being an ignorant infant to being a competent adult. And then maybe, if we're lucky, we move beyond being an adult who may be quite a primitive behaving person to an altruistic human being. Because that is, in my view, the pattern of the emergence of consciousness, which is what we can see, if we take science seriously, in the emergence of existence. One of the things that I found easy for me to do, which is quite difficult maybe for other people to do, is to accept existence as an accident, as something which I cannot give a reason for. People look for a reason for existence itself, right? The Big Bang back 15 billion years ago, why did it happen? And they want to say, well, somebody snapped their fingers, or the scientific reason. It's very difficult to do that. So I say an accident. And if I can accept that, then I can see randomness. I can accept chaos. And that is a bit how the universe works. There is order, but there's also a chaotic element. Back to the human development. How do we grow? We start off. What do we need when we're born? What do we need within moments? Anybody? Anybody? What does a doctor do when a baby is born? Why? What do we need to live?
Breath.
Thank you very much. We need to breathe, okay? That's the first thing, okay? And then the other stuff comes. But that is a primary survival element. Okay, next things we need. Food, water. And then we move on, shelter. And then we move on, relationships. Now, if we can, those are very primitive. Anyone heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Okay, so that fulfills most of Maslow's hierarchy. And it explains most of our experience in a way that we can understand as we were growing up from infancy through childhood, through to adulthood. But we know, we look around and we can see that many adults often behave in rather a childish way. We had somebody at the top of America for 4 years who was a beautiful example of that. And we could see those sort of playground behaviors coming out. When you have the basics to live, the food, the shelter, the breath, the water, the friends, you can relax a little bit because you know you're okay. Inside, your instinct, your mind is telling you you're okay. And that is when you can start to begin to know yourself, find out who you are, reflect on who you are, because you're not scrabbling for food or wondering whether people like you and are going to protect you, or actually trying to cod you and kill you or steal from you. You can reflect. And once you get it to that level, you start to become a creature that can become organized and cooperate with other creatures, whether it be another human or maybe a canine or a bovine. Right? Very few of us start to move beyond our ego. Okay? Because in all of those phases of development, it is very much about us and our own survival. Even when we're cooperating, even when we're organizing, it's inward focus. In my view, there's a step change if we can get past that kind of sophistication and become an even more complex being, and that is altruism. And this is something which is strong in humans. And that is about being connected to others and not just other human beings. The connection to the world, to existence. Right? The metaphysical connections, the mystical connections, and so on. So if we can establish a situation where we can find that, that is really becoming human. And that's what we see in some of the sages and gurus, and maybe it's what they talk about. But it doesn't have to be a sage or a guru. It can just be you meet them in the street. Personally, I find the best in humans is often the people I meet going through my daily life. The person who fixes my car, right? A hard job, but it's done with a smile, and there's somebody who's making a contribution, and there's a relationship and so on. I don't find it when I'm walking through the city rubbing elbows with the suits. That is a world of primitive competition. And that is the world we live in, a world of competition. And until we all individually make a choice to stop grabbing and pushing, the world will not change, because we will continue to live in a world of competition where others copy us. When we start to think about cooperation, collaboration, giving, sharing, well then you will see the world changes very quickly. And that's why I think it comes back to the individual. Quick little story from the internet. I hate Facebook, but sometimes you see interesting things. Does anyone know of a game called Monopoly? Yeah. Who plays Monopoly? Who still plays Monopoly? Yes. Oh, very good. I used to like playing Monopoly because I could always beat my brothers. They were younger than me, and I'm a mean bastard. But I stopped playing it because I realized, maybe when I had stopped being a teenager, that it wasn't a friendly game. That even if you were winning, it didn't feel good for the people in the group. And I just don't like that feeling. I like to feel good. I don't want to be pushing somebody down. I actually don't enjoy the feeling of winning over somebody else. I want to win with other people. So this meme comes across the Facebook. Monopoly wasn't always called Monopoly. It used to be called, I think, the Game of Life. And it came with 2 sets of rules. One set of rules was called Prosperity. And the other set of rules was called Monopoly. And it was a game where people would play by one set of rules and then the other. And they would decide, well, do we want to play a game where we're all fighting to win, Monopoly, or do we want to play a game where we're sharing to win? And everybody learns very quickly that prosperity comes when you share. Now, to me, as a financial engineer, it made super sense. Thinking, oh, well, in competition, let's see. Now we have a fight. I fight with you and I win. That means you're dead. Oh, gosh, I've just wasted all of those resources. There's a person that can be productive, useful, loving, creative, and all the rest. And I've just wiped them out. So competition is continually destroying resources which are valuable. Okay? And it's a very pointy-headed kind of game where you're only looking for one objective, like make more stuff, instead of maybe make people happy, or don't kill too many things, or don't destroy the mountains and the seas. And so competition is not a clever dynamic for an intelligent society. Whereas prosperity, you share and you grow. And when Parker Brothers bought the game, they got rid of one set of rules and it became popular. And they could do all that marketing stuff which controls our brains to make us do things that actually aren't good for us, like eat sugar.
But we still love chocolate, yeah?
Shh. I'm not perfect. In fact, I'm far from it. I'm a very, very bad person. Trust me.
Some people have faith in charities. Yeah. And a lot of charities are investing in the new environmental social governance elements in finance. So in this game of finance, how do you feel about charity investors? Mm-hmm. And is ESG going to save the planet?
Well, the answer to the last question is no. Yes, Deirdre, faith, hope and charity. the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse. People think that faith and hope and charity are good things, but for me, faith and hope and charity are signs of a dysfunctional system. If we need charity, it means that the system is not naturally looking after itself. If we need hope, it means we don't know where we're going, right? If we need, who have we got off the table? Faith. Who we've got to kill? Charity? Well, charity, obviously. I mean, if we need charity, it's because people aren't being looked after themselves. Faith, same thing. If it's faith, we don't know what we're doing. We're not self-critical. We're relying on things which you use when you don't have a successful system. They should be embedded and endemic in our behavior. So, is ESG going to work? Of course, ESG is never going to work, because what we all know sitting in this room is that rules do not work, right? The people who make the rules, people like me, because we're rich and powerful, don't have to follow the rules. We never have, because we're the ones that make them up. And we make rules that we can follow, but other people can't. A story. I know somebody who makes fabulous cheese. She's been making cheese for 10 years. But she's a small cheese producer. Now, why would the big dairy companies not mind about somebody like that producing cheese? Well, apparently they do. Because they influence the regulations in the country. They influence who the inspectors are. And they try and put small businesses like that out of business, just by coming along and saying, oh, you're not following this rule, a rule which they probably cannot follow and which almost certainly doesn't impact the product. Rules do not work. Okay, that is not how we behave. We like to make choices, so we have to make the choices ourselves. And the first choice is to divest from companies that are corrupt, spending too much money on marketing, not delivering a proper product, put sugar in the food, whatever it is. We need to change the system. The reality is, I'm going to say a bad word, probably get, switched off immediately. But anarchy. Anarchy is people making choices. Now, anarchy works very well when people are intelligent. It doesn't work so well. It can even work in non-human situations if the resources are there. You take rats and you give them a resource-rich environment and they will behave very socially with one another. You put them in a corrupted environment and they'll behave like bad humans or humans. So I think it's really up to us to find out who we are, take a breath, sit back, have a think, and make decisions for ourselves, which maybe don't necessarily seem to be the best for us immediately, but will certainly prove to be better for ourselves in the future. Maybe I'm a bad example. I'm not rich and I'm not famous. I spend a lot of time scrabbling around in mud for no money. I get less revenue when I sell carrots than I would generate at minimum wage for harvesting and delivering them to the grocer. But it's worth doing because I've got carrots. Check them out afterwards. They're delicious. But so what I have got, instead of wealth and fame, is I have relationships. I still talk to my son, which is nice. My wife puts up with me, which is good. But I have a very rich life. I live in nature. I breathe fresh air. I decide what I do when I wake up. Okay, so I work very hard, but, it's my choice. I have freedom. Are you free? Who is free?
So, in terms of the big cheeses of the world, nobody goes to jail in this country for white-collar crime. So how can we protect the crumbs and the little cheesemakers and actually have an identifiable justice for not just justice for the small holders of the world and correct pricing. But in terms of the injustice in this country, I hosted an event once in Dublin, and I mentioned the fact that 2 of my clients that tried to open an accounts were based in Ireland. They weren't Irish, but they were based here, and they were intentionally going to defraud the system. And they tried to get past me, which was never going to happen. But their answer was, when I told the audience in Dublin, no one ever goes to jail here. And they all laughed. So how can we change our own justice system so people actually feel supported in this country to start with, in the rules and legislation, so that we can actually say that corruption is wrong, you need to go to jail, or pay the fine, or be proactive in your choices in your business, so that they don't get a slap on the hand and walk away when they destroy the hedgerows, when they destroy small production, etc.
Unfortunately, I don't have all of the answers to all of the questions, but I do know that everybody in this room does, and I do know that we are going to find the answers together if we start asking those questions. As a model and a pattern for finding these systems, these overall systems which are going to be better, I think we follow the same kind of nature-based model that we find in ourselves, in our own development systems. And when we want to develop ourselves, what do we do first? We have to find out who we are, address ourselves. And how do we do that? We become aware of ourselves. We spoke in the previous session about feeling ourselves, awakening our senses. All of this is a part of becoming alive. So, awareness. Well, we need to be aware of what we are putting in our mouth and how it gets into the supermarket from which we're buying it. And we need to talk with each other and the people that are in the supermarket about why it's not appropriate, why it's not right, what is wrong. And we need to say, for example, that, oh, did you know that the cheesemaker they're trying to close her down? That's not right. Because when those sounds reach the institutions, that's when they start to change their behavior. When they start to see, the people are the power. It always has been individual choices. Now, I don't think that the current criminal justice system is a viable, sustainable criminal justice system. The costs and benefits are ridiculous. The way that the law is written and executed is, you can see it. Anybody who works in it or comes close to it will complain about its inefficiencies and its illegitimacies. Political system, ditto. Where is democracy? People keep talking about it as if it's somewhere. It does not exist. There is no democracy, clearly. Right? That is people making choices. We are not making choices. We're not even being asked to make a choice or look at a decision. So, what is it? When you get community-based decision-making, where people make decisions about their communities, like we make decisions about our homes, then things will start to flow in a much more natural way. But awareness is a big issue. And it really is a question of people standing up and probably taking a hit and saying, this is not right. I do not agree. I will not do it. You can all start by stop using Windows on your computers, right? Microsoft is clearly a corrupt company, right? And the person who built that company came to the market with a gene therapy which was marketed as a vaccine, which he made lots of money off. And we were all believing him left, right, and center. Why would we keep endorsing Microsoft as a company by paying how much do you pay to put Microsoft on your computer these days? Probably 150 quid if you buy the computer, and if you have to buy the software, it's probably 350 or something. And then you spend another few hundred quid for the Word or the Office or the this or the that. And it's all buggy, badly designed, hacked together, stolen software. What is the biggest operating system on this planet?
Fungi?
No, in terms of computer, but that was a good question. Good answer. I liked it. That one was best. She wins.
Linux.
Okay, so thank you. And why?
Because it's a community-based...
No, why do you think it's the biggest operating system?
Because it's used by business.
To do what?
To keep it secure.
Okay, so if I can add... It's the servers that run all of the backbone of the internet.
Yeah.
Okay, so nobody uses it on their desktop.
Well, the professionals do.
You mean an engineer?
Yeah, an engineer.
An engineer might. What I was getting at was the fact that we all carry around these phones. And I was making the connection with Microsoft because Microsoft took Linux, right? They locked it down and called it Android, and it is now on everybody's phone. So that's billions of instances of Microsoft software which nobody has access to. And they built that by taking something that was built by somebody and given for free, locked it down, started charging for it. This kind of behavior is in our face all of the time, and we accept it. So unless we start addressing these, asking questions about where our food comes from, where our clothes come from, where our cars come from, where our computers come from, where the software is, and facing up to the realities that we know about because they're right in front of us and we're turning a blind eye, aren't we? We ignore it because it's so much easier to just, oh no, I'll just accept that because otherwise it's a pain. Otherwise it's a pain. And that pain is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. As the planet's going to go on, nature will survive, but our biosphere, that is not going to survive. Okay? That is not going to survive because we are killing it with our behavior, both our physical behavior but also our emotional behavior, the way we interact with one another. Sorry, Deirdre, once I go.
So, did you know that Imelda Marcos had handbags to match all of her shoes?
Oh, my word.
All of them. But her son has just been voted in the Philippines, thanks to Facebook. So in terms of messaging and big picture thinking, how can we communicate openly? Can we? And how can we find your message? And equally, whose messages are we receiving? How can we filter all of this beyond this library talk today to find out ways to find each other, ways to support each other? So do we need a new Facebook? What do we need to help this thinking?
We definitely need a new Facebook or a not Facebook. And again, it gets back to that whole imperialist, white supremacist, heteropatriarchy. It's the capitalist system which has allowed Facebook to exist in that form. I mean, if laws were followed, certainly if morality, it wouldn't be around. It would not be in that form, just like Microsoft would not be in that form. There would be a diversity of providers who interoperated and cooperated. We would have a much more resilient system, right? That was one of the things we noticed with the pandemic. The resilience in our global supply chains has been destroyed by scale, by large companies that do everything. And so when you have one accident, all of a sudden there's no loo roll on the shelf because there aren't lots of people who can fill the gap. It's just one provider. I suppose I want to give the simple answer, which I give for everything. Breathe, think, flow. If we become aware of our breath, if we try it and find that taking a breath can calm our minds, which I believe it can because I think that's how humans work. If we can practice taking 3 breaths a day, and I don't mean, like you're all breathing now, I mean being aware of the breath, okay? And practicing abdominal breathing and regular breathing, because when you do that, it actually changes the way your body functions. It changes the way your heart beats. It changes the way your mind operates. And it allows you to move from the instinctive, primitive, reptilian brain reactions of fear and hate and greed and love to your consciousness, the thinking behavior which connects us to one another, to the past, to the future. So that's about thinking. So if you can breathe and learn to breathe in moments of anxiety or anger, let the moment of anxiety be the trigger for that deep breath or that 3 deep breaths. And then you start to think about the decisions you're making. Think about, well, am I really doing it? Is this the right thing? And then you learn to follow the natural path. And you say, oh no, it is not good to support a criminal. It is not good to vote for somebody who abuses people. And these things will evolve on their own. Breathe, think, flow. Breathe, think, choose. The choice will be a natural choice. So I think that's really what we can all do. Getting the word out, that's very difficult, because one of the things that I believe is that we cannot promote ourselves. Celebrity is dangerous. Promote the ideas. It is no good running, oh, did you hear Tom Butler? No, that is not a good thing, because then everybody thinks they can hang their answers on Tom Butler. It's just like, oh, I'm a Christian, therefore I'm good. No, this is not a healthy thing. What you need is the ideas behind them. You need to say, oh, have you learnt to breathe? Did you hear? It really helps. Pass it on. And that sort of thing will ripple very quickly, just like that horrible Facebook rippled through our lives so quickly back in 2004.
So I'm going to give Tom a quick breather, and I hope you've thought up some good questions for him, because we've 10 minutes left. So Tom is Breathe, Think, Flow, and you're welcome to find him subsequently. But who has burning questions currently, or what visions have awoken in this conversation that you want to grill Tom on?
I was just wondering what you think of the book by Eisenstein, Sacred Economics.
I don't know it, but tell me about it. Yeah.
Well, it's very much, what we're kind of talking about now, which is when we go back to our primitive society, and we had not barter but gift. So I gave you wool, I don't get wool back, but I give, I don't know, Mary some cheese, and that is the circular economy. And even in the 1950s in Kerry, we were still trading on foxtails. I'm not saying that's ideal, but the fact that things have run away so quickly, and it's easy to get kind of overwhelmed and not to be able to breathe by, the catastrophe around us and not being able to do something. But if it starts here and it starts at home, and we can, feel inspired and open portals and get well, feel healthy, your decisions get better. So the book it's written by an economist, so that's why I thought I'd reference it, but
Thank you.
It goes back to that principle again. Yeah.
That's helpful. I wouldn't survive without that kind of behaviour. And what is the, somebody perhaps, is it metal? Metal in Irish? Metal. Right now, I don't survive without that here. Okay, I do not. Okay, I cannot. And most people don't appreciate what it means to be a smallholder, even, somebody who was able to start doing it. But it's not a world that the current system allows you to exist in. And I do not survive without friends helping, fixing the tractor, changing the tyre, giving me a tip. And then sometimes I can give them a few logs from the wood or something, or show up with a few carrots and just say, thank you very much, because without you, I do not exist. I cannot do this. And that's just the nature of the world we live in. So it's interesting, the idea about The Economist, because it was an economist who first caught me on to the problem with capitalism. And his name is Richard Wolff, and he did a talk at Google. And I don't know why I watched it, but I did. It was on the YouTube. And he says, I got a bachelor degree in economics from, Midwestern University, and then I got my master's from Harvard, and then I got a PhD from MIT and from Harvard, and then I taught at this university and that university. And in all my time of doing all of these degrees, the only system they ever mentioned was capitalism. And this is ridiculous, because clearly there are other systems and other ways of making it. And that just struck me, because I had the same experience going to these excellent schools, and they never said, well, how else could we do things?
But as you say, the rule makers are running most of the senior education.
We forget that it was built by the king. The king and the pope made the world we live in, and we still live in that hierarchy of power.
Back to fox's tails then.
Or carrots.
So in terms of the feminine power that you mentioned, we have Bridget focusing a lot of attention on Mother Earth in ways that we can actually protect Mother Earth. So last question, because we have 2 minutes left. How do you sustain your own self?
You don't need much to live. You don't need, I mean, you can see, I'm obviously sustaining myself quite well, aren't I? I mean, that's not a problem. We don't need a lot. But I'm really glad you brought up Mother Earth and the feminine. You led a conversation. You invited us to the Carlo Environmental Network film the other day.
Which happens once a month, Carlo. Visual, please come and join us.
Very interesting, not least of which because one of the little phrases was the only way for farming to work, agriculture to work, is to have smallholders. So I thought, okay, yes. But women, it came up there. The environmental movement is women. It is the feminine. And I like to think that, yes, I'm a bit feminine. I think those are my strengths. Compassion, love, nurturing, those are strengths. But I talk about feminine behaviors because I think those kinds of behaviors have been depreciated in our culture. And that's bad. It means that children don't get their mothers, they don't have the touch from their mothers, they don't have the attention from their mothers because their mothers are off working. And their mothers have been masculinized by the culture. And that was the only way they could find meaning in their lives because everything had been depreciated. Oh, you're not worth anything, you're not worth anything, you're not worth anything. We have a big problem. Women are very important. We all come from our mummy. Stop being so silly. The feminine is a critical part of us. And I love the concept of Gaia. That the earth is a living entity, that the whole thing is alive. Now, it falls down on the whole reproductive element of life. But what is life if it's not consciousness? And maybe there is an element of that in everything.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Butler? Come on.
I would like to thank you all for your patience.
I kind of want to ask a question, but I don't know if it's opening up something too late or, you know.
Never too late for questions.
How do we do this? I've been wanting to do this for 20 years and I'm stuck. And I have community, but it's almost like on holidays. I have close, good community. I do mahal in my home and I create, but it's not there in the foundational level. Don't have people coming to eat the food from the garden and use it or do it on a daily basis. And I'm like, where is it? I'm trying to reach it and get it for such a long time.
What is your name, please?
Sandra.
Sandra, thank you very much. I have no hope for you. I have no hope for you. I have only reality. And to say, you can do it, you keep on doing it, you will have a positive effect. It is what you want to do. It doesn't make me feel great when I drop my carrots off, and I know the best carrots that you can buy, and people look at them and say, what are those? Because they're not the sort of straight, special, clean, the whole thing. And they're sold at the same price as in the supermarket, which sells regular carrots. But I keep doing it. It breaks my heart when I've got cabbages rotting in the field because people will not buy the cabbages because it's not in a plastic bag. It breaks my heart because I grow different varieties of potatoes. Please examine them. I've got purple potatoes with purple insides. You can't find them, but they're so much fun. But people won't buy them because they're not queens, roosters. But it will change. It will go back to the day when people have taste buds and want to live instead of being stuck in a two-dimensional blue screen of death. Go for it. I'm with you.
Yeah, we all are.
Spirit.
I think we're out of time, but great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you. You were wonderful. So wonderful.
Did not know where that was going.
So what about the doll?
Oh,